This campaign is about saying to the university that an organisation that has, I think, over 2,000 members of staff have joined actually needs to be treated in the way that trade unions are treated in other institutions in the higher education sector in this country. That the University of Cambridge can no longer continue to behave as if it's living in a country where trade unions don't matter. Being a trade unionist is one of our rights. We have a right to be treated like our colleagues in other institutions. We know we'll have to fight for it. And in fact, the branch has gone from strength to strength since we started mobilising, organising, taking collective action. And we know that may still be also something we have to do in this case. But this really is a chance for us to actually come together and start to organise properly for the first time publicly around this question. So I'm going to introduce the first few speakers. We'll be running the meeting with 2 short panels, then followed by some chance for Q&A and questions and contributions. The first panel is really focused on the question of what recognition is, what does it mean? So we've actually asked some colleagues from other union branches, and we're going to be joined shortly by Joe Grady, General Secretary of UCU, who'll be speaking to us around 20 past 1. Our first speaker, however, is Kevin Biderman from the Royal College of Arts, UCU, who is going to be telling us about their campaign for recognition, what it's meant for them and what a difference it's made. So I'd like to hand over to Kevin.
Hi, everybody. Very happy to be here, and I'm hugely impressed by this campaign that you've got. If this is sort of a testament to what's to come, I'm sure you'll get recognition very, very soon. So yeah, in September 2020, our UCU branch signed a recognition agreement with the Royal College of Art that allowed us to collectively bargain for academic and academic-related staff and receive facilities time for doing this. So I want to talk to you today about 2 interrelated things this has allowed us to do. 1 is to have the capacity to function, and 2 is to hold our employers to account. And in order to understand this and why it's important, I just want to start by giving you a bit of background into the working conditions of the RCA. So in 2016, the UCU Precarious Work in HE report found that the RCA was one of the #1 employers of casual staff, with 90% of those teaching on insecure contracts. And in response to this, the management said they'd work with the local branch to make the changes necessary. Instead, our only union rep was made redundant. And with UCU branch, they are effectively non-existent. In 2018, they moved all hourly paid lecturers off contracts of employment and onto terms of engagement. This stripped these lecturers of employment rights and basically put them on 0-hour worker contracts. No one was consulted on this change. And this is what happens to an institution when you don't have a union. And not having a recognition agreement really makes it much easier to bust your union up. After the attack on members, a number of newer staff members started to reinvigorate the union. But as we didn't have a recognition agreement, the college wouldn't even see our new reps. They said it would be inappropriate to have us at the negotiating table as we were engaged rather than employed. We used creative publicity, the National Four Fights dispute, and industrial action to help galvanize our branch and create further leverage. And we, in fact, doubled our membership over the 2020 strike and forced the college to include hourly paid lecturers in our recognition agreement and commit to keeping every single one of them for the following academic year, even though they are on the most precarious contracts in existence. Now, this year has been rough on everyone, but we've had wins that realistically couldn't have happened without the time and structured negotiations that a recognition agreement gives you. We've spent facilities time making sure that the college kept to their agreement to rehire casual staff, contacting them and fighting for them at the beginning of the year. We were able to set up a health and safety committee and had wins which allowed staff to continue to work from home during the pandemic and keep the college doors shut. We've had wins on casework and getting casual members full sick pay. We're included in inductions so that every staff member who now enters the institution is given a talk by us and can be recruited for the union. And we've had wins on equality, forcing the college to employ a head of equity and inclusion that we as the union are to interview as well. But it's also meant that we can keep a close eye on the college and make sure that they do not get away with the types of disastrous changes that they've tried to implement in the past. The college will, of course, still try to reduce the conditions of staff. And as we speak, they're trying to decrease job security, entrench casualization further, and move to a 12-month teaching model, all of which will exacerbate systemic issues of inequality. But guess what? We won't let them. And we have the time, power, and organized structures to stop them. You need a recognition agreement because the college will never stop trying to lower the conditions of lecturers unless we force them down a different path. Keep your union strong, fight for a recognition agreement, and empower your reps to make the changes you want to see in your institution. That will give all of you a real voice at the negotiating table and allow you to build a better university from the bottom up.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And now we'll move over to our next speaker. We're very pleased to welcome Keith Sands from Unite at Cambridge University Press, and he is going to speak to us about his experience at CUP and bring solidarity from Unite. So, Kevin, Keith, over to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Kevin, for your section as well. And thank you very much for inviting me to speak. I'm Keith Sands. I'm a publisher at Cambridge University Press and also a union rep and chair of the Unite branch there. There's been a union recognition agreement for publishing staff at Cambridge University Press since 1985, before Unite, in fact, was in existence. And in that time, we have established ourselves as the trusted voice for staff on workplace issues. We negotiate pay, we are consulted on terms and conditions, we campaign for improvements in the workplace. We have helped countless staff with advice and representation during grievances, dignity at work and bullying cases, and redundancy consultations. We've been alongside colleagues during the worst things they face in the workplace. We've prevented job losses during collective redundancy consultations. Unfortunately, rarely all of them, but some of them. We actually have a fairly cordial and mainly constructive relationship with our management on the whole, but they also know that we're no pushover. We will challenge unfairness and will be supported by staff when we do so, both our members and also widely amongst staff who are not our members. And this keeps the worst excesses of the management of Cambridge University Press in check. We don't win every fight we take on, but there is no doubt that the press would be a worse place to work without us. All of this is possible really only with a strong recognition agreement, which covers the majority of staff, which gives a framework for discussions and negotiations and a shared understanding that we will not put up with discrimination. And it also gives union reps time out of their day jobs to support members. Last October, as many of you may know, it was announced that Cambridge University Press is merging with Cambridge Assessment. And I'm sure you'll hear something about this from Mike later. Cambridge Assessment has no union recognition agreement, though it has a number of members of Unite and also UCU, including our friend Mike Averton. Though there is actually, there is UCU recognition in a small sliver of Cambridge Assessment, which is a company called the Centre for Evaluation and Monitoring, which they recently took over, who are based up in Durham. So there is a foot in the door for UCU there as well. Since the merger was announced, we've faced new kinds of obstruction, unfortunately. Although they've told us they will not de-recognise us as the press staff on the press bargaining unit, they are claiming that we will only in the future represent legacy staff of the press on old contracts. They are proposing new contracts for new starters, and they propose that people who take on these new contracts will not be inside our bargaining unit. So even with a strong recognition agreement that's been in place for over 30 years, you can be a union and still be undermined through a situation like a merger. Now, Cambridge University itself is probably not going to merge with another university anytime soon, but this is the kind of thing we're looking at. And we are a department of Cambridge University as well, as is Cambridge Assessment, in fact. They do not want to recognise unions more widely across the new company. So we are negotiating hard at the moment to defend our recognition in advance of the merger, which happens in August this year. We will look to extend that recognition after the merger using all the means we have, recruiting new members, statutory routes that we would have to increase our reach. We may soon have a petition of our own to share with colleagues across the university, which I hope people on this call will sign. I'm not really here to talk about the merger, though, except to say that union recognition across Cambridge University, including the academic university, but also the press and Cambridge Assessment, is ultimately one fight. It's a fight for recognition. It's a fight for better workplaces. It's a fight for pensions and pay and dignity at work and job security, and a fight against discrimination, casualisation, erosion of terms and rights, and against a hire and fire culture, which is taking root in so many businesses, institutions and academic institutions in Britain. Finally, if I've got half a minute left, on a more personal note, I actually like my job most days. I've been a union rep for about 5 or 6 years. I fell into it almost by accident at another company where I was involved in redundancy consultation. Wanted to give something back. And I also used to work as an English language teacher overseas, where unions were almost unheard of, and some of the most exploitative, dreadful working practices were pretty rife. Workplace rights almost unheard of in that industry. Some of my most satisfying days at work, though, when I felt I've made a real difference, have been connected to union work, representing a member through redundancy and challenging an unfair decision and so on. And that's why I'd say, by all means, sign a petition, join a union, support your campaign, but maybe don't stop at that. It's really easy to feel politically powerless when we look at the state of our national politics or global politics. Easy to feel that you can't make a difference. But your workplace is one place you do have power. You do in your workplace, even if you don't want to, are making a difference to the lives of everybody around you who are your colleagues all the time, every day, with whatever you do. And if you become a union rep, you can change that place, that workplace, for the better. It may feel like it's on a small scale. It may feel like one step forward, one step back sometimes, but it does matter. It's real, and it makes a material and emotional difference to the workplace and the people around you. So join a union, but be active in it as well, and make that difference. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Keith. And I just want to obviously emphasise that we stand absolutely in solidarity with our colleagues in Unite and the several Unite branches around the university, and with colleagues in Unison as well, which is the other union representing staff in the university. And as Keith said, this has got to be a united fight across people in different unions. So now I would like to introduce our final speaker in this session. I'm very, very pleased that the General Secretary of UCU, Joe Grady, is here to speak to us. We're delighted to have Joe joining us for a whole number of reasons, not only because she is someone who represents, obviously, the union nationally, and she is becoming very well known in the media, been very outspoken in recent months. She can give us a perspective, we hope, on what's happening around the country and what the union nationally will be doing to support our campaign. But also it's a great pleasure to welcome Jo, because also she is somebody, I think, who has come to prominence in the union in recent years out of the back of the waves of strikes that took place since 2018, and in a way represents the kind of revival of grassroots enthusiasm and organising that has been so characteristic of the union in recent years. So Jo, please take it away.
Thank you, Anne, and two amazing speeches before. And I actually just wanted to really echo what Kevin said. This is an inspiring campaign. And it was a pleasure to share a platform actually back in August last year with some activists from Cambridge when we were promoting the strike school, which I know, I hope was enjoyable anyway for those who took part in it, and to get a one-on-one with organising and recognition expert Jay McAlevey, I think was nice. I just wanted to say a few things really, because I know obviously there's people in this virtual room who are obviously part of the campaign, you know, who've been there from the beginning and will be there when you get recognition. But I know that there's people who are in this meeting because they want to find out more about what's happening. So I wanted to really talk about why be in a union, but why be in a union now? You know, if we look around the world, not just in the UK, there have been people taking strike action during this pandemic for recognition. That is how important recognition is. The two previous speakers have talked about all of the things that you can gain access to if you're recognised, and they are fundamentally important. But I think one of the things that's really inspiring about this campaign, and this is before, you know, you've even really got stuck into the university yet, is they are already trying to fragment your solidarity, to fragment your numbers. You know, they offered you a deal, but it wasn't a deal that included everyone. And we know that employers, but especially universities, you know, and especially very elite universities like Cambridge, they like to do that. They like to make you feel special. They like to make you feel like you're special just to be here and that you don't need to extend that solidarity to other people. So to be here, to have already rejected something that was quite egregious is a really important first step, because being part of a union, you know, it isn't wanting other people to protect you. It's about standing up and protecting yourselves. It's about standing shoulder to shoulder with people that your university would wish you want to actually differentiate yourself from, and saying you come for one of us and you come for all of us. And I think the really inspiring thing about UCU is whether you look at what's happening at Liverpool at the minute, at the University of Leicester, at any of the branches that have been in dispute, Edge Hill, Coventry, Chester, these are all institutions where different members, different categories of UCU members have been under attack, and everybody has stood together. But the other thing that we do is we stand up with our students too, and we fundamentally know the power of standing together as a community. So that is why being in a union is so important. Being in a union now in the UK, with this pack of liars in Westminster, in Downing Street, is more important than ever. You know, no one is going to give us industrial power. No one is going to trade it with us if we make enough concessions to them. The only way we're going to get industrial power is this, and all the things that will come out of this meeting. And, you know, all of the things that Kevin said, they'll give you an agreement now. You have to hold their feet to the fire the entire time. And you do that, again, by doing the things you've already done. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with the sort of principles that we've used from organising, that we have kind of pinched from Jay McAlevey, but I think are really important. You know, your branch are doing these power mapping. Where do you have members? Who are the important members? Who do you need to reach out to? And this applies to all of you in this room. Who do you know that you can put, you know, leverage your influence on within the university? But also the feeling of open negotiations that is happening here. I don't know exactly who's in this room, but members, non-members, anyone can come along. The fact that you have really openly rejected what was a terrible recognition agreement is super important, because universities and employers, they like to do these little backroom deals. You know, they like to keep the people that you elect as your negotiators detached from you. So the committee is already doing really amazing work. If you're sat in this room thinking, I want a piece of that, I'm inspired, you know, I want to roll my sleeves up and get involved, drop them an email. The beauty about trade unions is you can start at any time. Yeah, someone will always be more, you know, further down the journey than you. They'll know more things than you, but they won't have the experience that you have. And, you know, our employers do the worst of fetishizing experience. We shouldn't be doing it to each other. So if you've got enthusiasm, if you want to change things, you know, talk to your committee. There will definitely be things that you can do and that you can help with. And there may be even sneaky ideas that you have that other people haven't had, because they're too kind of like, you know, dedicated to the thing that they're doing. So yes, gaining recognition is incredibly important for all of the reasons that have been outlined already. What it gains you access to. There is a reason the university is withholding it, and there's a reason why they wanted people to feel special for having it. We are stronger together. We are going to need everything, use every tool in the shed, not just for the next 4 years, but God forbid if we get another Tory government in this country for the next, 5 after that. So building our own industrial power, building our own leverage, building our own numbers. And this is another thing I just wanted to finish with, is the more people we have on our team, the stronger we are. Unions aren't purely a numbers game. Of course they're not, but it can't really be argued that if we don't have more people with us, we won't be able to demand and actually be more powerful when we threaten to withdraw our labour or whatever the particular tactic we might be engaging in. And I think what Keith said was really important. I'm going to kind of riff on that just before I end. We are all here in education, in whatever role we do, because we like it. We like our jobs. We usually like our students. Sometimes we even like the things about our jobs that we shouldn't do. And we are the university. And I know it's a phrase in UCU circles that's thrown around a lot, but we are. And demanding recognition is a very obvious, simple part of being part of that recognised industrial machinery of your university. Not that you managed to get an elected spot on a particular committee, that you as a worker demand and deserve it. And I think there is nothing more empowering than sitting in a room full of people that are represented at every particular part of the university demanding that together. And I think that's why I'm just really honoured to be here at the beginning. I know it's not quite the beginning. I know you've been doing a lot of work prior to this, but the beginning of this campaign, our union, whether it's our prison education members who have been smashing it during COVID, they've won their first ever industrial action ballot post-2016 over health and safety. UCU members building power, building leverage in their workplaces, what makes us a strong union nationally as well as locally. We're not powerless. And I can't believe I'm actually going to end this with a Malcolm X quote, but I think it's really, really important. He once said, "We are not outnumbered, we're out-organised." Well, that's not the case here in Cambridge, and it's not the case nationally. So all solidarity with you. If you need and would like me to participate in anything in the future, I am here. But from what I can see, you're doing a cracking game on your own, and I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Jo. That was amazing. And I'm sure we will be back to ask for your help and support, because we will need as many people behind us as possible, and it is fantastic to have you working with us. So we are going to now open up for questions from the floor. This section of the Q&A, if you could perhaps focus preferably around questions related to things raised by our first panel of speakers. So what does recognition mean? What's it about? And so on. We'll have another round of Q&A where we can talk a bit more detail about the Cambridge campaign. So, if you could save up questions that are more specifically based about our campaigning tactics for after the second round of speakers. But we would love to have questions coming in. You can either raise your hand using the Zoom function, or you can put things into the chat. While people are having a think about what questions they might want to ask, the other thing is just to say, please do fill out the form that Julia's been posting in the chat. It is really important to us because we have 94 people on this call, and this is a fantastic number of people, but we can really make that count in terms of organising if we know who you are. I can see Adam, if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi, thanks everyone so far. That was great. One thing I was thinking about was sort of implementation of anti-casualisation frameworks that national UCU are talking through. And I believe recognition would allow us to have a lot more powers to implement the national frameworks locally. I was just wondering if Jo could maybe sort of fill in what sort of things at the national frameworks recognition would allow us to implement at a more local level.
Sorry, will you just repeat the final end of that question? Because I was listening to the beginning and trying to interpret it, and I kind of got a bit lost.
Yeah, no, it's just what sort of national anti-casualisation frameworks recognition would allow us to implement here more locally.
Yeah, so I think so. There's a few things. One thing that I could mention is you will know, or some of you might know, that UCU is currently engaged in trying to get a PGR as staff campaign off the ground. So we've been liaising with a lot of PGR groups over the summer to kind of flesh out the bones of what that campaign will look like, because what we're attempting to do is essentially establish a new employment floor in higher education to kind of lift all of those PGRs who are disgracefully exploited everywhere, and really give them kind of all manner of employment rights, whether that's paid sick leave, maternity leave, all of those things. So for you as a branch, I think gaining recognition as we are launching into this campaign, which, I mean, it isn't anti-casualisation per se, but obviously it's a huge part of tackling casualisation and that huge two-tier workforce and exploitation of those staff on the ground. I think it would be a really, really powerful thing actually to have these two things combine, because it would allow you at Cambridge to roll straight into, really kind of demanding the things that we are hoping to be building into the sort of national framework across the UK. I think whilst we are stuck on a national level at the minute with an employer via UCEA that refuses to really go anywhere near as far as we need them to on nationally agreed sort of recognition frameworks on casualisation, the better deals you can extract from your employer in this moment obviously help, because it means when we're going to UCEA, we can say, this is what we are getting as best practice around the sector. We want it nationally now. So this isn't just a local thing, though obviously it is a local thing. It is much more powerful than that. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, sorry, just found the unmute button. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much, Joe and Adam. So I've had another question in the chat, which is actually for Keith. Maybe you could comment a bit on how recognition helps unions work together, and of course, actually, also we'd be happy to hear from Joe and Kevin's thoughts on that question.
And you're barely audible.
Sorry, I just said. Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry.
Did you say there was a question in the chat?
No, the question is, how does recognition help unions work together? And that was directed partly at you, but if Joe or Kevin would also like to comment on that, that would also be great.
I think it's down to people on the ground very much. I think that sometimes unions actually don't work successfully together. I mean, there's all sorts of arrangements where there's recognition of both NUJ and Unite in one workplace, for example, in newspapers in London and so on, and friction can occur, I suppose, with different. I think for me, it's about if we can arrive eventually at the press and assessment, for example, at a joint agreement with Unite and UCU, both represented in that new organisation, together with kind of an agreed framework for working together, I think that would be incredibly helpful. That's what we want to get to eventually. We're kind of slightly on the back foot trying to defend our current Unite recognition agreement as we move into the merger first, but that is the long-term picture, and I've been talking to Mike about that as well. But it's really down to people on the ground. I mean, it's about recognising that the same, whichever union you're in, it's the same. These are the same fights against casualisation, for fair pay, against discrimination, for a better workplace. I mean, these they are. There is so much common. It shouldn't be difficult for working people in the same workplace to find common ground, whichever union they happen to be in. It might be easier when there's one recognised union sometimes, perhaps, but I think that it shouldn't be, actually. It should be easier when there's more than one. But I think that a recognition agreement, we have to get to recognition agreements where different unions are recognised. Even if only one union is recognised and there's a number of people who aren't, I think that recognised union has a duty to work, at least informally, with other unions to ensure that they are being consulted via a recognised union. There's different ways that could work, which we're trying to work out ourselves at the press and assessment situation. Obviously, Cambridge University recognises Unite for other categories of staff than the academic staff, and Unison as well. So hopefully you'll get to a better arrangement. Sorry, I've gone on too long.
If I could say one thing,
brain dump that one, sorry.
Because I think this is really, really important, because none of us join a union or fight for employment rights or fight for whatever the particular industrial battle is at the moment because we think we're bad people. You know, we are involved in this because we want some form of progress and liberation, but we don't always see things the way other people do. And, you know, we're not always doing somebody else's role within the university or the workplace. And I think recognition is really, really important because it doesn't leave certain groups actually in a more structurally powerful position. And it makes sure that everybody has a seat at that table where the employment conditions of the university community is being discussed. You know, I'm sure back in the day, university academics thought they could run the university for the betterment of everybody. And we know that's not the case. So actually ensuring that all the different workers in a university community are represented at that table and have recognition, and that one voice you know, isn't used to diminish another or isn't used to speak on behalf of that group is really important. Because for me, the worst aspects of trade unionism is when we aren't working together to find a common path that everyone can get behind so that we're fighting together. And when you actually see, you know, domination and, well, we're going to get our way through. And that's, you know, recognition now, changing Cambridge, changing the face of HE or education. You know, involves talking to all different groups of people, understanding it from their perspective, understanding that maybe our members might have to make some concessions because other members in the university of a different union really need our help. And that's what recognition's about. And that's why the university wanted to divide you. That's why, you know, they want to kind of have, during these mergers, different groups pitted against each other. So that's the kind of a really important aspect of it.
Yeah, I would completely echo, you know, what Joe and Keith said. I think it's so important. And actually, at the same time, we got a recognition agreement. So did Unite, and we work really closely with them. So in fact, we're working on casualization. We have pre-meets together before we go into committees. But also, you know, if you look at, say, assimilation agreements that have happened at other universities like Goldsmiths, they work together with professional services to make sure that that could be paralleled. So it's actually one agreement that serves both unions. And of course, you know, there's many outsourced workers as well, and IWGB look after them at the RCA. So we work together with them, and we actually run kind of student staff assemblies and invite all the unions together to meet with the students, because, you know, as Joe said, we are the university. You know, they're nothing but a badly organized managerial framework without us.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And yes, very well said. That does sum up really what universities without us and the students look like. Lorena Gazzotti wanted to ask a question.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I had my video off because I was having lunch and I don't know how to do it elegantly. But I have a question for Joe. So at Cambridge, we have the peculiar situation where we have the university where we are not recognized, but we also have the 31 colleges that, as far as I know, don't recognize any union. And although they are very well organized to speak with one voice, all 32 of them when they want, they're very stubborn on declaring that they can't do it when it comes to workers' rights. And so I was wondering whether there are parallels. There are other institutions in the country that are facing this situation of multiple employers dealing with the same workers, with some without recognition, and how they manage to fight back.
So, I mean, I don't think that there's anywhere beyond perhaps your neighbours in Oxford that have quite the same fragmented, multi-collegiate sort of structure of, you know, denying themselves any autonomy to do anything when they don't want to. But as you say, kind of like spontaneously acting collectively when they do. It's not the parallel you're asking for, but I think an interesting parallel to point out was actually during the last 12 months, when I felt like I had been banging my head against a brick wall with the universities minister in the UK, who has at any one point said she cannot order universities to do anything because they're autonomous institutions. but when it has suited them, has delivered all kind of directives to universities, such as, adoptment of the IHRA, all manner of anti-woke stuff. So I think the kind of tactic of deniability and distancing, but also ultimate execution of sort of almost totalitarianism when it suits them, is common. I think the strength that you have here, and I know the branch has already been quite involved in it, is power mapping, because they're going to continue those tactics. So actually, I think a more effective way is to start chipping away and making big wins where you can in strategic colleges. I think as well, it might be interesting for us nationally to pick back up with you about the Trinity boycott and what that might mean, and any kind of renewed efforts with that, and to really show that when we are deciding to leverage our industrial power, we will do it surgically and we will get wins, and then we will use them as the kind of the launch pad to transforming that on an institutional level. But I mean, there isn't anything, as far as I am aware, that is quite like what you have here elsewhere. But that would be my kind of tactic if I was with you, and I think that's kind of what the committee are doing.
Thank you very much, Lorena. I think there was a question from Ronald in the chat. So I'm just looking at it. Ron, was that a question to anyone specifically?
No, and I'm happy to read or interpret it. It's a bit of a long, shall I? Thanks so much for all your presentations. It's a bit of a long shot, and maybe this is more for Joe, but Kevin and Keith. Cambridge has a big problem with bullying and harassment. A number of us have experienced it directly, and staff surveys point this out regularly. And it seems to be puzzled what to do about it. Just wondering if there's some way we can show that recognition would be with a critical friend would be helpful to solve that seemingly unsolvable problem.
Well, I mean, I know this meeting's been recorded, but I don't really care. I mean, senior management teams bully by their nature, don't they? So, I don't want to call it gaslighting, because I know gaslighting is a misused concept, but I think it's probably correct in this instance. The kind of the discourse of care and the discourse of wanting to resolve these issues, and then simultaneously acting in a way that is institutionally cruel, that seeks to humiliate. And they probably don't think it humiliates, but actually keeping people on contracts that are dehumanizing, keeping people at the whim of patronage is humiliating. And they don't want that removing. They don't want it even challenging. That is why the recognition now to them is so egregious, because you should just be grateful that you're here. So, for me, and you're nodding, so maybe you agree, the bullying is hardwired into the system. It is not accidental. It is sort of fundamentally part of it. And the reason why unions and recognition and coming together and actually, looking out for people who are on lower terms and conditions than you and wanting an uplift, wanting to, either burn down the university or increase widening participation. All of these things are things they don't want to see, because actually some people take real strength from that elitism. So maybe in an ideal industrial relations type world, it could be a critical friend. I mean, my argument would be you would still have to be fundamentally very cynical about that relationship, because I just don't think things work that way.
Thank you very much. And we're coming towards the end of the time when we have to finish this section of the Q&A. And I know that Joe, unfortunately, I think you have to leave shortly. So, I mean, I would just like to actually come back to Joe. Is there anything that you would like to sort of wrap up on, some final words before you leave?
I just would like to sort of just say how lovely this has been. I know we're all like 14, 15, whatever, the past is a different country, months into this pandemic, and sometimes it feels really hard to get energized and you miss the kind of oxytocin that you get from people in the room. But watching you from afar via social media and being here today, and listening, I think especially listening to Kevin talk about what they've been doing is really inspiring. And it reminds us that we're all here together, and it reminds us that we're all fighting for a common cause. And, the odds may be against us at certain times, but we do have the numbers. And I think like any other union, we have all of the skills at our disposal. You know, we are great networkers. We're plugged into so many communities. And we just sort of, we're finding our way, aren't we, of all working together and of plugging in. And I'm just so inspired by everything you're doing here. So just keep on at it and keep in touch. And yeah, I've got to dip out, but all the best.
Thank you very much, Jo. It's been brilliant to have you here. And also I want to thank Kevin and Keith. I know Keith has to go in a minute as well. For some inspiring contributions. I'm going to hand over to Ted in a second, but I just wanted to highlight an event that actually relates to something that Jo just mentioned. She talked about the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism as one of the examples where the university's minister is quite happy to impose things centrally on autonomous institutions. We actually have a webinar that our branch is organising next week, and I'll put the details in the chat. This is open to all members of the university, explaining why we think that the imposition of this definition is a threat to freedom of speech and academic freedom. So please do sign up for that if you can. Thank you very much to everyone who contributed in the discussion. I'd like to hand over to Ted, who will be taking from now on.
Thank you very much, Anne, and thanks to an amazing roster of speakers to kick things off today. It's such inspiring stuff, and it's really, really galvanizes what we've been trying to do here in winning recognition. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ted Trager. I'm a member of the organising group who's been working on this campaign. I'm also a member of our elected negotiating committee to push talks forward with the university. And we've heard a bit about what recognition means and why it matters. And the second half of this meeting, we're going to talk about the state of play here in Cambridge. So what recognition, what the state of the recognition campaign is at the moment and how we can win it. So I'm going to hand over to our speakers in a little bit. But first of all, I'm just going to give you a whistle-stop tour through the saga that is recognition at Cambridge. Probably all of you here know that Cambridge is the only public university in the UK that doesn't recognise UCU. But that's not for want of trying. We have requested again and again recognition. And in fact, in the 2010s, it was something of a ritual where we would ask and we would get turned down every year. So fast forward to 2018, 2019, 2020, as a result of the national strike action we were taking as a union, also as a result of the amazing local campaigns that we were running on casualisation here, we finally started to get the university to take us seriously. And it was in the middle of our last round of strike action in March 2020 that the Vice-Chancellor eventually admitted that something had to give and that this couldn't go on. So at that point, in a meeting with the Executive Committee of Cambridge UCU, he invited us to put in a formal request for recognition. So we did. And then the pandemic happened. So fast forward a few more months from that, and we get to about August 2020. And the university came back to us at that point. And they said, well, we know you've been asking for a while about this, and we can see the rationale for you being recognised, but only for academic staff, not for academic related and research staff. And so we just told them that wasn't good enough. We can't abandon so many of our members, so many of our core members for a recognition deal that only covers a small sliver of people. This is about recognition for all of us, giving all staff groups at this university a recognised union that they can join. So at that point we said, well, what are you going to, we can't accept this, our members can't accept this, you have to go back and rethink. And then the university came to us and they said, well, if you're really insisting on going ahead with recognition for academic related and research staff as well, then we'll have to test the appetite across the university for recognised union. And that means, they said, some kind of poll where every academic related and research staff member in the university, whether or not they're a union member, gets asked if they want a recognised union or not. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. That's the state of play. We've already rejected this partial offer. We don't want recognition for just a small group of our members. So we're looking at going into negotiations on a recognition deal, and we're also looking to negotiate at exactly what process it's going to take to show the university we need recognition for academic related and research staff too, and we can't leave them out in the cold. So to tell us a bit about how we're going to do that and what the plan is, I'm going to hand over now to Michael Averton, President of Cambridge UCU.
Hello, thank you for showing up today. I'm Michael Averton. I'm a senior assessment manager at Cambridge Assessment. I'm also the first branch president and maybe last branch president from Cambridge Assessment, given the merger that's coming up, as we've heard from Keith already. And really, this is, as everybody has said already, this is the time that we really need recognition. And how do we achieve it? There are very simple things that everybody can do. If you came onto the meeting today, there are quite simple things that you can do to help us in this regard. And one of the most important things, as you should be aware, if you haven't already a member, then you really need to join the union. At this point in time, then in the uncertain world that we're in, the way that the university is constantly being restructured in different parts, the lack of security that we have, even if you're on an open-ended or permanent contract, not to mention the fixed-term contracts and the way that most of our teaching seems to be delivered on a same basis as an Uber driver. In fact, Uber drivers get a better deal now, thank you to union action. And that's the most important thing. What we need to do, as Joe said as well, is we need to boost our membership numbers. And the best way to do this isn't through sending emails. It's not through kind of like getting people to sign up to forms, but please, if you haven't already signed in their registration, please do that, because we need that data. But the most important thing is to talk to people, talk to your colleagues, talk to your friends. Raise them the issue of joining the union, what a union is, what it does, what it actually means. And so that we can all stand together and work together for a better working environment. At the end of the day, my position has always been not one of confrontation with the management, but we should be working together to the same goal. What the management really needs, and what they should really need, is a happy and productive workforce. And a good way of achieving that, very, very cheaply for them, I've had to add, is through union recognition and union membership. So getting people to join the union, also then talking about the necessity that we have for recognition. So why is recognition so important? What can it provide us with? One of the key things has already been mentioned, and that is the facility time, the paid time that we get to do union duties. So that, again, when the university relies on or takes for granted the actions of union officers in the way that we support the workforce, not just in individual casework, but in other things as well. And yet they don't pay us to do this work for them when they really should. And they should provide us with that time so that we don't have to spend hours at the weekend or after work putting in the extra hours, when really what we're doing is for their benefit as well. And so that's a really important part of it. And then thirdly, then what we also need you to do, like I say, is sign up, get active. It's like Keith said in his contribution there. It's not just about being a union member, it's about being active as a union member. So it's a case of, yes, standing up and being identified and standing with people and helping people, but it's also about, making a difference, making it count. And so that's really what we're wanting to do. Going forward, we've just requested that we start proper negotiations again with the university, because they asked for a hiatus because of the pandemic, because, things going on, they didn't have time to deal with little things like recognition. Well, actually we think you do, and you should. And so we've gone back to them and said, well, excuse me, can we talk about this again? And we're going to be pushing it really hard. And we're looking at various different ways of kicking down the door rather than just getting open a crack. And so that's what we're going to be heading for and hoping for in the next couple of months. And hopefully we'll be looking at getting a deal, something on paper as quickly as we can. That's the way that we're working at the moment. So like I say, get involved, join up if you haven't already, sign up to the campaign and help us out. Hand back to Ted, thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Michael. Yeah, just to underline that point, we gave the university the time they needed to deal with the lockdown. We heard their concerns about workload for management, but we think it's high time they came back to the table. So this morning we've emailed them. We've said we want a recognition meeting right away, as soon as possible, to talk through the details of this, because it's too big an issue to leave on the back burner. And you know, on that negotiating committee, the negotiating committee we elected earlier this year, I think we all really need to feel the kind of support from the campaign as well, because it's only if we've got that campaign behind us that we can really push these negotiations. So just to underline Michael's kind of 3 points: sign up, talk up, speak to your colleagues about this, and turn up, get involved in all of our campaigning. And now I'm going to hand over to stalwart of the union, Eleanor Blair, to take it away.
Thank you, Ted. Lots of you know me already. I might be a familiar face and a voice from the picket lines, but for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Eleanor, and I'm a member of academic-related IT staff at the engineering department. I joined UCU, well, it was AUT in those days, when I joined the university, which was 20 years ago now. And I was pleased to be able to do so, because as a member of IT staff, IT isn't really a very unionised industry, and unions are quite unusual for IT workers. But as a member of academic-related staff, the UCU or AUT always made me feel welcome. So UCU is my union. It's the union which supports me, and it always has been. But over the years, I've always been surprised that while Unite and Unison are recognised unions, who are formally recognised voices for their members at Cambridge, the same isn't true for UCU. And there never seemed to be any good reason why. And as somebody who's been active on the committee and also been a rep for the department, it does actually hinder what you can do. It makes it much harder for me to contact colleagues and invite them to join the union than it would be. It means that UCU isn't listed on the university webpage in the same way that Unite and Unison are. It makes it much harder for us to recruit members because we simply don't have the space within our departments to put up posters the same way that they do. There's so many different ways in which we're held back by the lack of a recognition agreement. And the stupid thing is that the university do recognise UCU. They recognise us as individual support workers when we support our members as casework. They recognise UCU when it comes to national bargaining through UCEA or through UUK for pay and pensions, but they don't recognise us locally for collective bargaining on local issues. And while Unite and Unison have a right to consultation on terms and conditions, we are only ever there by invitation, and we don't have the same protections that they do. Finally, to talk about the proposed recognition agreement being only for academic staff. I'm not an academic. My professional academic-related colleagues in libraries, archives, facilities, outreach, counselling, museums, estates, sustainability, loads of other areas, they're not academics either. Our research staff are not considered to be academics. That Joe touched on a campaign to ensure that researchers are given better pay and terms than they currently are, but why are they not considered academic? And even our graduate students, even when they're employed to do teaching as well as research, they're not considered academic, and the university doesn't want to recognise them. But we are all members of UCU. Recognising UCU would be a step forward for the university, but how can it be considered recognition if it doesn't include all of us? UCU represent academic-related professional staff. They represent researchers, and they represent graduate students across the entire sector. It's not just for academics, and it's time for the university to recognise that and recognise all of us. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Eleanor. It's fantastic. So we've got one more speaker before another Q&A. And at this point, I want to take you back to that meeting back in March last year when we met the Vice-Chancellor and he formally invited us to submit our recognition request. What I didn't say about that meeting was that it was in a kind of tiny pokey room somewhere around the back of his normal offices, because his current offices were at that point being occupied by students in solidarity with our strike. And as we were speaking to him, we could just hear chanting and noise and general agitation outside. I can't tell you how much stronger that made that meeting feel. So I'm going to hand over to stalwart of student activism, Ewan Hawkins, to tell us a bit about why recognition matters.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, MC, Julia, the other speakers, and everyone else who has made this incredible event today possible. I speak here today as a student who has worked, collaborated, and organised with UCU through Cambridge Defend Education, Cambridge Zero Carbon, Demilitarise Cambridge, and other campaigns. And through this, I experienced the transformative potential of student worker solidarity. And I want to speak today about that student worker solidarity in recognition, what it is, what it means, and what it can do. To start with what student worker solidarity is, and what it looks like, for me, it is really captured in two stories from the strikes. The first is of breakfast runs, of hundreds of students joining picket lines with food, with drinks, and with their bodies. This tactic, inspired by the umbrella revolution in Hong Kong, rooted in a radical politics of care, and led by women and non-binary students, for me, distills the essence of solidarity. For 36 days over the course of three years, students joined the ranks of workers on picket lines in huge numbers. The second story is of student occupations, of students entering the centres of management power and using direct action to leverage their power in solidarity with striking staff. In both rounds of strike, students occupied the old schools, the heart of senior management personnel in the university, and won demands that benefited both students and workers. Strikes and unions, at the most basic level, are a chain of acts of solidarity, from the workers who stand with their co-workers to go on strike or join a union, to the students who stand with their staff. The nature of this chain means that every link is important, from storming into the Vice-Chancellor's office to sipping tea together on a snowy picket line. We came together and made each other stronger. To move to what student solidarity means, with what it means when we chant students and workers unite and fight, for me it means we recognise our common interests. We recognise that the debt-burdened student, the casualised postdoc, and the underpaid librarian interests are the same, that those interests are counter to the interests of senior management personnel who have been both the architects and the beneficiaries of marketisation. The same system that exploits casualised staff and discriminates against working class, disabled, women, non-binary, and BME staff exploits and discriminates against students. Those students who joined the breakfast runs, skipped lectures, recognise that by standing side by side and shoulder to shoulder with staff, who are standing with those who held their common interests. At the same time, the students who occupied the halls of power in Cambridge recognise that those who usually work in those spaces are the senior management who orchestrate the exploitation and mistreatment of both students and staff. And finally, to turn to what students and worker solidarity can do. When we occupied the old schools in 2019, we centred recognition in everything we did. We pressed the Vice-Chancellor on it in an open meeting on the issue. We forced him to publicly admit he'd considered it. We centred it in our communications, and we formed a breakaway autonomous Cambridge College, Solidarity College, and became the first college to recognise UTU. The limited recognition offer that was made in March, as Ted said, came in a meeting in the Vice-Chancellor's office with students of Solidarity College and occupation right outside the door. We centred recognition because we knew that when workers have rights and representation, it makes students stronger. And I'm so proud of the relationships and bonds of solidarity that have been formed and strengthened since then. And I know that if students and workers stand together like we have before, we will win, because students are with you and they will recognise all of us. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Ewan. Huge solidarity to you and all the students who were so instrumental in getting us to where we are today. So I'm about to open up to another Q&A, but I just want to sum up a couple of points. I want to tell you what we're fighting for, and I want to tell you how we're going to get it. So what we want a recognition deal that works for all of our members. Cambridge always boasts it's exceptional, and that's true, but sometimes it's in all the wrong ways. Cambridge is the only public university that doesn't recognise UCU, and now it's the only university that's threatening to recognise a small fraction of UCU's members. Like Eleanor said, in practice, we're there. In practice, they want us in the room, but only when they choose to invite us. So they want it when it's convenient for them and not when it's convenient for us. We need a full recognition for all of our staff categories, academic related, research, and academic staff. So how do we get that? 3 steps: sign up, talk up, and turn up. So sign up. Sign the sign up sheet today. Sign the 38 Degrees petition. You can see all the links in the chat, and I think Julia will put them in there. And if you're not a member already, join the union. There's no better way of getting involved in union activity than making this your first day in the union. Talk up. What does that mean? Well, we need to talk to colleagues like we've never talked to them before. Because if the university is going to roll out a poll across all of the staff, not just union members, we're going to need to be telling people what recognition is and what it means for all of us, why it's a better deal for all of us. And so that means chatting to your colleagues about it. It means taking a few minutes just to raise the issue. It means asking them if they've thought about joining the union, or if they are union members, if they've thought about coming along to the next meeting and getting involved in the campaign. And that's the third ask: turn up. We're not going to do this if we don't have the full support of our base behind us. We need a big mass member campaign. And that means more meetings, not just meetings like this, where we have lots of speakers to talk about things, but meetings where we actually get things done. We plan, we organize, we strategize, we start working out how we're going to put pressure on the university. Because the university think we're just going to go away, or we're bored of this issue, or this isn't going to engage us, and they can just get away with whatever they want. But the biggest strength we have is our numbers. And so we need to start turning up in numbers. We need to work together. We need to think of creative ways that we can put pressure on the university to show them that whatever deal they think they can railroad through is not going to get past our members. It's not going to get past the staff of this university. It's just not good enough. So we've got 2 meetings coming up, which are especially important for research staff and for academic related staff. So May the 25th is our meeting for research staff, and June the 15th is our meeting for academic related staff. So if you're in one of those 2 categories, make sure you've got those dates in your diary now. So that's really what we're thinking about at the moment and what we're planning. So I'm going to open it up to a Q&A at the moment for any questions about the Cambridge specific plan and what we're planning to do. I've got one question already that's been submitted to me. So it's a question for Eleanor. And the question is, what would your message be to academic colleagues about why you need recognition too, why we need recognition for all our staff groups?
Basically, I think it's just a case of solidarity. Academics and academic related staff, it's there in the title really. But there's no good reason at all for why the union should recognise one staff group and not others. They already recognise multiple unions for assistant staff, so they can't say that those of us who are in UCU should go off and join one of those instead if we're not academics, because the UCU does represent all these different groups, and the university should just recognise that. In the conversations I've had with academic members in my department, I found they're all very supportive. They have different priorities in some cases, but most of them are just as keen to get university work and union work done and to get them both working together. So yeah, just get involved. It's important for all of us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eleanor. I've got a question from Natalie in the chat. So if somebody wants to support the campaign but has limited time to spend doing so, what are the most important things they can do? Well, really the most important thing, I think, is to come along to the meeting and get involved in some way. The more people come to that meeting, the less work everyone else has to do. And we can talk then about the little things that we can all do around the edges of our job, as well as the kind of big plan of action we've got. But I think, if you want to start today, then just talk to a colleague, talk to a couple of colleagues, just raise the issue with people. Ask them if they've heard about recognition, if they know what recognition is, or if they, if it's kind of come up on their horizon. And if not, then point them in that direction. We've got resources on our website. We've got the petition. We've got kind of ways of explaining this to everybody. Yeah, like Eleanor says, just keeping the message out there on social media. And yeah, like Emma says, we don't want the first thing people know about this issue to be the university dropping a poll on them. We want people to know about this and to know why it matters before the university even think to get around to asking them. I've got a question from Martin. How did UCU Oxford go about gaining recognition? I don't know if anyone knows more about that than I do. My sense is Oxford were much more straightforward about it, but maybe Ronald, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the clues from the history of AUT was pretty much everyone, this is pre-92, of course, this is 30s or so, 1930s, some 100 years ago, I think, it was early on, almost everyone recognized except Cambridge. And the idea was so many people were involved, they didn't feel a need to. That's the history I've heard. Maybe others have a better idea. But over time, it just accumulated. There's no need to, and then opposition to. Can I turn that into my question, which is, can we extend our petition to get colleagues from other universities, and not least Oxford, to say, why aren't we part of the club? I think it might be interesting to put pressure on here, because there is a lot of sibling rivalry of what are they doing and why aren't we doing it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I mean, anyone can sign the petition at the moment, so it would be great to do that. But I think it would be really good to have some Oxford-specific joined up action. Because we're also, like Lorena was saying earlier, we also face this difficult problem where even if we get recognised by the university, the colleges don't give us the time of day. So we've been talking together with them about how we get recognition in colleges too. And I think it's really clear that the university campaign here is the first step in what we then need to do, which is to roll recognition out in a much wider scale.
Two things, if I may. If we want more information from Oxford, I'm happy to work with whomever to get more from our counterparts. And if we do extend the petition, then we could get some national publicity on the back of a kind of shaming campaign.
I've actually, Lydia, who is in the meeting, has offered to say a bit about the Oxford background. Lydia, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Just to say really briefly, Oxford recognised AUT as it was in those days, decades and decades and decades ago, and were part of the wave of universities that recognised AUT right when it was first formed. And it wasn't a case of how did Oxford get recognition, it was just, as with most of those universities, the pre-92 universities, they gave us recognition. They understood the fact that you needed academics and academic-related staff to have a clear voice at the institution. It's the fact that Cambridge didn't. It's not the fact that Oxford did. One of the other things about Oxford to remember as well is that their contractual situation is different. So in Oxford, which makes life easy with the colleges, because in Oxford, your contract has to be part college, part university. We don't have the really complicated scenario that we have here, where you have a contract with the university and a contract with a college, and they're absolutely separate. So it has made things slightly easier in Oxford. We do have an awful lot of links, and I know that the local committee have got links with the Oxford reps as well, and I'm liaising with my counterpart who covers Oxford as well, so we are getting that information through. But any offers of help is a good thing, but we are making sure that we've got very, very strong links with Oxford. And we have been putting that argument to the university, and actually, frankly, they don't care. So just to say, Ronald, tried it, been there, done it. You know what they're like. Sorry, back to you, Ted.
Thank you, Lydia. Does anyone else want to ask a question? Anne?
Actually, I have a question really about the timescale for the university's next moves. Do we have any idea when they might launch this kind of poll? What do we know what's happening next from their point of view?
To be honest, no, not yet. I don't know. Lydia might have a different impression, but my impression in the meeting where we told them that we didn't just want an academic staff deal was that they were kind of taken aback by this. And so the poll idea was kind of something they thought up on the spur of the moment as a way of testing opinion across academic related and research staff. So we have to hold them to the details of this. We have to say, well, what do you mean by this poll? What are you hoping to show about it? What do you think it's going to prove? And when do you think you're going to roll this out? Because as far as I know, they really just haven't put any thought behind this. But this is a bit like what these meetings sometimes are. They really think we're going to respond in one way, and when they're challenged, they just kind of bluff a little bit. We'll hopefully have a better sense of the timescale for all of the negotiations once we can get them up and running again, once we can get a meeting in the diary. So that's ASAP, I think. And when we do have those meetings, we'll be feeding back what stage we're at and what's been going on and what we're working on at that point. So hopefully by the meetings in May and in June for research and academic related staff, we'll have members of the negotiating committee there talking about how the negotiations are going and how we're going to bring the issues of academic related and research staff to the table. Eleanor mentions in the chat the proposed changes to Regent House. If you're at Cambridge, you might have seen this. The University Council are proposing various ways of reorganising this cumbersome sort of archaic institution of Regent House. And in the past, that's mattered for recognition because the university have told us, why do we need recognition? We've got Regent House. So it's kind of what passes for self-government at this university. The two proposals on the table either enfranchise a number of people, but only if they've been here for a certain number of years. And the other proposals disenfranchise a huge number of people and really keep things in the hands of largely academic staff. So it's no surprise which the university prefers. They're really throwing their weight behind this kind of grade 9 and above academic staff heavy way of governing the university. So that's something we'll have to be talking about as we come back to this and as we go through the recognition process. Does anyone else want to ask a question at this point? Ronald.
So just to come back to Eleanor's point, just so you know, Eleanor and I and a few others have started talking about the Regent House proposals, and anyone else is welcome to join in to try to put together amendment and fly sheet and to help disambiguate from the union issues and recognition. We'll have to square the circle. It's not impossible, but there's a strong push for more democracy, expanding that from the Regent House, which is pushed back. But at least we got through the idea that greater representation is better. So they've expanded the proposals since the interactions we've had, the discussion in particular. Anyway, there'll be some magic we have to pull off, and anyone's interested in helping work that magic.
Excellent. Any more questions? Martin.
Thank you, Ted. Is there anything to be said for getting a foot in the door first, strategically speaking, right? So maybe gaining recognition, UCU recognition for academic staff first, and then on the basis of that, trying to gain recognition for everyone, academic-related staff included.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone want to answer that from our panelists? Michael, do you want to take that? Do you want me to take that? I mean, I think in these cases, the devil is absolutely in the detail, because if the university will want to close that door very firmly and make recognition for academic staff the last thing we get rather than the first thing we get. I think we'd have to think very, very carefully about that strategy. I think we need to keep their minds very firmly on the fact that we are not giving up on academic related and research staff, and we need to be talking about how we are going to prove to them that those staff groups want a recognised union, and that's where our energy is going for the moment. Michael, do you have anything to say?
Just to repeat what Ted said, basically, it's something that we'd have to deal with at the time and see how how the mood was going. But if we did accept that as a tactic, it would be very much the case of, okay, thank you very much, we'll have that. And by the way, we want this now. And so in case of, we're not satisfied with this, we will be looking for full recognition. But it's certainly something that has been discussed previously, and it might be, like I say, it could be a tactic that we do use, but again, it would have to be very judiciously.
Yeah, and we know the university likes to mothball these things. We know it likes to kick things into the long grass. We need details on this poll, because that is really the way that they've presented to us. We're gonna show the appetite for recognition, but we need commitments. We need binding stuff from them, and we need to pursue this strategy of recognition for all, because the university really thrives in dividing people up. It really kind of starts getting going when we're thinking about, well, this group or that group. And what we need to show them, I think, in this campaign, in this launch and going forward, is that nobody's going to give up their right to recognition without a fight, and we're going to put up this fight.
Yeah, I was just sorry, I was going to say very much the same thing. And as a member, I'm a researcher. I've been a member of the university for nearly 11 years, and I'm absolutely incensed that the university believes that I should be basically treated worse, as is the same case for academic-related colleagues, not have the same access to somebody to represent me officially and formally in local negotiations, that my representatives would be treated differently, essentially, because I happen to have a different thing on my contract. That is utterly unacceptable. We have to stand united. And I think, as Julia put in the chat, our position as a branch, as a union, is that we reject this divisive logic. We absolutely stand as one, and we will win recognition for everyone.
I think I want to reiterate Anne's anger there, because this is, it's great to be launching this campaign. It's great to be fighting this campaign, but it's absolutely shocking that Cambridge thinks it can get away without recognising UCU, and thinks it can get away without a very, very standard practice of relationship between employers and unions. It's infuriating. And to think it can get away by just kind of palming us off with a bad deal or kicking things into the long grass is just not good enough. We don't want to be there because they want us there. We want the right to be there. We want the right to say what we want to say and to negotiate on what we want to negotiate. And that's why it's so important that we sign up, we talk up, we turn up, we get this campaign off the ground, and we show them that this issue isn't going away. The people do care about this. The people are angry about this. So on that note, unless there are other questions, I think we're coming to the end of the meeting, and I just want to wrap up by saying a big thank you to all of our speakers today, to Anne for hosting the first half, to Kevin and Keith and Joe Grady, and then to Michael and Eleanor and Ewan in the second half, and to all of you for coming and for your questions. It's been amazing. To play us out, we're going to go back in time again to the occupation and to the heyday of Solidarity College, to listen to what I think was Solidarity College's official anthem, certainly its unofficial anthem, and really the soundtrack of the final days of that strike. So Julia, I'm going to hand it over to you.
We conquered all of old school. We'll never get a star. Let's see out to East Room. We got the fucking law. The students and the workers united in one group. We're coming for you, workers.
heady days of pre-lockdown when we could actually get together. Thank you, Julia. And thank you all for coming. We'll see you all soon. Meetings on May the 25th, June the 15th. Make sure you've got them in your diaries. Sign up, talk up, turn up, and hope to see you in person before too long to push this campaign forward.